everybody. Welcome to Be the Voice, Champion NICU Babies and Their Families. I am so happy to be a part of this inaugural webinar series by Mighty Little Giants. I absolutely adore Jessica and the mission of this organization. As she mentioned, I'm Kimberly. I'm the founder of Saul's Light. And we are a local support organization that is addressing the unique social emotional needs of NICU families and also bereaved families throughout the state of Louisiana. We do this through direct services, and we also do it through advocacy campaigns. So thinking more long term and upstream of how we want our community to be in the future and how we can create a healthier state. Before we get started, I have no disclosures to declare. And this is how our session is going to go. So this is the agenda as follows. We're going to talk about how the NICU impacts families, how you can advocate for yourself and for your baby, and how you can advocate for change in the community. And then lastly, we'll close and have some time for questions. So as I mentioned before, I am Kimberly. I am a former public school, high school teacher, a birth doula, and the most important job that I ever had is that of mom. The photo you see here is me peering into the isolate of my first child, my son, Saul. And despite having the best case scenario of secure housing, transportation, and employment, I can tell you that still to this day, the NICU was the most difficult place to exist as a parent. I know it is not lost on this audience how unnatural it is to be separated from your child for an indefinite period of time, to witness them undergo painful procedures, to live in fear of the phone ringing, or to go days or maybe even weeks without holding them. And how the totality of all of that takes a toll on your mental health and your whole life, dividing it into the before, after. This journey is exactly why I decided to create Saul's Light, to advocate for maternal infant health equity, not just in our community, but throughout the country. Because I know what it's like to make it through the NICU, to be able to thrive outside of it, but also to live into the new normal with intention and with purpose. And so that's why today I'm sharing my story with you and talking about advocacy. So there's a quote that says, the NICU walls have heard more prayers than most churches. And I couldn't agree with that more. I think the knowledge of the NICU and how it impacts families is something that only those who have gone through it can truly understand. But our goal is to be able to talk about that a little bit today, share what it's like so that more people are aware of this experience that seems niche on its face, but it's not really, particularly when we think about the rate of prematurity in this country. Families experience significant emotional stress in the NICU. This can impact their mental health, their physical health, their social circles, and also their financial standing. Mentally, families experience significant stress, and for some parents, depression and anxiety. The sensory overload of the NICU environment can also lead to feelings of hopelessness and loss. That for me was a very big one. The physical state is also a very precarious one for families and parents who have just given birth. The postpartum period is a critical time for maternal health to recover and to adjust in an effort to prevent complications. So things like high blood pressure that can happen after giving birth. These are usually the times that families aren't even allowed really to focus on their own health because their attention is solely squared on their baby, and they're thinking about how to take care of their baby. But this is usually a time when people take care of you and take care of the baby. But it's kind of hard for people to be able to support you and comfort you when you're spending your days and maybe even nights at the NICU. Socially, families can experience feelings of isolation, helplessness, and sometimes guilt. The feeling that somehow you might be to blame for your baby being in the NICU, which of course is absolutely not true, but this is a thing that we tend to do as mothers and as parents. The pain of separation is truly difficult for families, and it can impact everybody's well-being, not just the parents of the NICU baby, but the grandparents, the siblings, and the extended family as well. Financially, a NICU stay really profoundly impacts a family's finances. And this is because there are significant out-of-pocket costs, not just for medical expenses that come with hospitalization, but the things that people really don't get to see, right? Those non-medical expenses. So these are things like transportation, food, and even childcare for siblings. Many units don't allow siblings to be present, and so families have to take care of that as well if they want to be in the NICU. Families also face reduced income because they are out of work, and there may be the factor of non-existent paid leave, right? This is not something that we have in our state, and so it can really put a family into experiencing financial hardship. And so the totality of this all is so significant that it really can feel like a loss, and it really can leave you feeling grief over your experience. Perhaps you missed your baby shower, or maybe you miss those pregnancy photos with a big round belly, right? There is room for us to grieve those experiences that we miss. And so, because those losses um, make families experience grief, I want to talk about what it's like to go through that to set yourself up for the next phase, which is advocating, of course, for yourself and your baby. So, when you're coping through grief and loss, it's important to acknowledge your pain and allow yourselves to feel your emotions. This is a very normal reaction to an abnormal situation. And so to feel that loss of control, to feel isolated, to feel stress, or even depression, these are things that come with the territory of being in the NICU and having a sick baby and thinking about your own health, thinking about your baby's health and how you're going to get through. It's important to always seek support, to lean on your friends and your family, those that are in your support system. Allow people to do things for you. People always say, right? Call me if you need anything. Actually call them. Let someone get groceries for you or deliver meals or take your dog for a walk or, babysit your other kids. This is a perfect time to lean on the bonds of community. I also can't recommend enough seeking therapy and with seeking mental health services with a qualified therapist and or counselors. So support groups is another way that families can feel support through their journey. It often helps to find people that you have shared experience with and to be comforted by those and to be understood. Um, the next thing I have is for you to take care of your physical health. This is so important for people that are in the postpartum period. Eating regular healthy meals, getting enough rest whenever possible. I know that's difficult to do when your baby is in the NICU, but sleeping when you can, drinking lots of water, and having light movement and exercise just to really embody yourself and stay in sync with your feeling and what your needs are at that time. Lastly, it's important to practice patience. Healing is not linear. It's like the NICU, right? It's up and down. And so there are going to be lots of times that you may feel a flood of emotions, and maybe you'll have calm days, and maybe you'll drop down to the lowest of lows. But this is a great time for you to practice grace and give yourself some grace for all that you've been through. Now, the bonus I'm going to give you is to be able to practice gratitude. This can be really hard to do when you're in the NICU because it is such a tough place. But it's very important to give thanks for your life, for your body, and for your baby, and to celebrate the small things and the victories. Now, tending to your own needs can help you not only better advocate for yourself, but also advocate for your baby in the NICU. And this is super important because your baby needs you. You are absolutely the most important person in your baby's life. I like to call this part parents as prescriptions, right? What does that mean? Well, when people are sick or they are not feeling well, they might get a prescription for medicine, right? Well, in this case, I'm thinking moms as medicine, right? Or parents as prescriptions. They are the thing that their babies need most in the NICU, and they have something to provide that is unique to them and only they can provide. The first is communication and shared decision making. It's important to have open communication with all of the people that are a part of your baby's care. So, doctors, nurses, therapists, and such. Communicating your thoughts, your fears, or some question that you Googled, right? It's important to let them know what you're thinking and what the types of things that you want to see happen for your baby's care. What are the things that you most, prioritize? Do you want to hold your baby right away? I know I did. Do you want to be able to breastfeed your baby? Do you want to pump first and then ultimately transition your baby to the breast? These are all things that can be communicated with the care team, and it is very important that parents understand that they in fact are part of the care team, right? So they have a significant role to play as the parent, and that all decisions should be made with them, with the parents as a part of the team. The next is attachment and bonding. You are your baby's parents, and there is no way that parenting should be stopped or put on hold in the NICU. So we know that parents who are present and involved in their baby's care leads to better outcomes. So what that looks like parenting in the NICU is that you're doing skin to skin immediately, as soon as possible, and as often as possible. It's that you're discussing those human milk goals and whether or not you're going to provide your own milk or use donor milk or use an appropriate formula. Milk is medicine, and this is one way that we can really invest in our baby's long term health. Parents can talk, sing, and read to their babies just as you would if your baby were at home. Your baby knows your voice and has known it for a very long time, and they love to hear it. So, this is a great time to bring books to read to your baby, to tell them the family stories, to bring pictures that the siblings created, to try to form some level of intimacy within the hospital. And then lastly, parents are providing a lot for their babies in the NICU, but it's also important that they provide for themselves. So, as when you get on an airplane and you get the message to put your mask on first in the event of an emergency, it's the same thing when you are in the NICU. It's super important to pour into yourself and care for yourself so that you can be able to care for your baby. Now, what this looks like in practice, right? Communication, attachment, and bonding and self care. It looks like these things, right? You're going to think always about that discharge plan and what it's going to be like to take your baby home from the hospital on day one. And so you can do that by making sure that the baby has a primary nurse. A lot of NICU families aren't aware that you can request a certain nurse, maybe one that you get along with really well, or one that you have a rapport with to be the primary nurse. This person provides a consistent day to day care. They communicate about the plan, and it can be super difficult to get used to new people when staff is rotating, doctors or nurses, or there's, shift nurses, but the primary nurse is a familiar point of contact and can really help a family to adjust to NICU life, but also to support the care of the baby and the family at the same time. We talked about communication and decision making. Families should absolutely be participating in medical rounds whenever possible. So it's important to find out when is rounding happening for your baby, and how can you be a part of that? How can you ask questions and get answers? And what do you need to do to be able to understand the plan? This is just another way, again, to build trust between the healthcare team and the family. And this is important for families to have information. This is how decisions will be made. And more so, it can help you to prepare for life after the NICU, which brings us to that discharge plan. So, preparing for discharge day one, right? Claiming victory over the NICU, setting yourself up for success, thinking about in the future, what am I going to do when I leave the NICU? How is life going to look then? It's important to participate in care as early and as often as possible to know how your baby feeds. What sort of things do they like, right? What's their personality? Maybe they like to be bathed in a certain way, or they like the diaper change in a certain way. These are all things that we're, as NICU parents, on a learning curve trying to discover about our babies because we're not with them 24/7. But this is a way for you to just set yourself up for success and also create a plan for any sort of follow up care or community based services or interventions that might be necessary for your baby after you leave the NICU. And once you do leave the NICU, right, you'll have to understand how that experience changed you, what that impact did, not only to your baby, but you, right? As parents, we never really forget that experience. I talk to so many parents all the time, and they tell me, I remember that sound or I remember that smell, right? There are so many things that you have to integrate into your life after NICU, and what we're going to talk about, in the next half of this presentation is how to do that. How do you take the impact? How do you take the mental health, and how do you take the practice of being a NICU parent and use that to make a change in your life and or make a change in your community? So I can tell you for sure that how the NICU impacts vulnerable families and how they learn to advocate in their child's best interest turns your life into what I call the after, right? Or the new normal. This can sometimes lead you to say, I have been so changed by this experience. I am now going to, change something else. I'm going to change this experience for other people that are coming after me, for people in my community or people in my state. I know for me, I was forever changed by the birth of my children. And I never imagined for one moment that my entry into motherhood would include prematurity and the NICU and loss. But my journeys through grief and healing irrevocably changed my life. It did. And it impacted my understanding of what empathy and what community really means. It's how I realized that not only was I not alone in having these experiences, but that there were a number of families in my community that were facing similar journeys. Not just in my community, but like in my very neighborhood, right? And in my state as a whole, and in my nation. And so for me, it was something that I had to say, I am going to be a part of something bigger than myself, right? What do I do with all this experience that I have? What do I do with the fact that I am not the same person, that I'm forever changed by this experience? And why I started this organization. So, with that being said, I want to talk about now how advocating for your baby changes to advocating for your community, right? So as parents of NICU babies, we are change agents. And sometimes what that looks like is just changing in our personal life, being more mindful and intentional about how we live our lives, how we raise our other children, or our relationships with other people. And for some, it might be starting a support organization like Mighty Little Giants or like a Saul's Light. Advocacy, just as NICU parents do for their babies, is a form of empowerment for other people in the greater community. And so, with that being said, recognizing the collective experiences that we all share is the first step to becoming an empowered advocate for change. The second step is using our collective experiences to craft powerful narratives. And these give other people a chance for learning, a chance for practicing empathy, and a chance to motivate others to act. And one important example of this is using your experience to fight for change in maternal child health. I want to share my testimony from the Louisiana legislature in favor of two laws that created, greater access to donor human. Let's take a listen. Good morning, Chairman Zerang and all the members of the committee. My name is Kimberly Novod. I'm the founder of Saul's Light, a New Orleans-based neonatal support organization serving families across Louisiana. I want to start by thanking you in advance for taking the time to listen to my testimony, and those of the community who are in support of House Bill 650 and 651, which will provide Medicaid and insurance coverage of prescription donor human milk for medically fragile babies. As a former NICU mom of a premature baby, I can assure you that the best form of nutrition for medically fragile babies is breast milk or human milk, or as we mamas like to call it, liquid gold. There is no denying that human milk is the best form of nutrition for an infant. There have been countless studies and research into this fact. One of the most important aspects being babies who receive to develop a fatal disease known as necrotizing enterocolitis, or NEC. In our state, where 13% of babies annually are born premature and far too many die before their first birthday, like my son Saul, you can certainly see why greater access to life-saving donor human milk is important. The recent formula shortage crisis should make us all consider the most vulnerable among us. Our babies, those that are clinging to life in our state's neonatal intensive care units. This is why I'm asking for your favorable passage of HB 650 and 651 to make sure that the most vulnerable babies in both the inpatient and outpatient settings are able to benefit from this incredible, selfless gift of mothers in our community. It is the greatest form of love to recognize that the future of Louisiana begins with our babies and to decide to invest in that future where all babies survive prematurity and go on to thrive. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman.
Now, once you have a powerful narrative, the third step is to share your story. I feel greatly for every single NICU family that is able to articulate their journey, to share with others, and allows them to see a different side of parenthood, a way that they share their journey and their highs and their lows, right? And these are all often powerful stories. It doesn't matter if a family experiences loss or takes their baby home, you will be able to see the light in any family that has been through the NICU. It reminds me of a quote that talks about people who have walked through the fire who go back to bring water for others. That is exactly what sharing your story is about, right? Our experiences can frame and reframe our not only our perceptions of our lives, but others. And it's the greatest thing that parents can do is to lean into that experience, to be able to find meaning and purpose in their life after it has been impacted by the NICU or after it has been impacted by NICU loss. So, another way to share your story is in the press. So, I want you just to see here, this was an article in Blavity News where I was interviewed by a reporter. And one of the things that we talked about, which is important to point out here, is not just how the NICU impacts families, sorry, but how the NICU is experienced differently by groups of people, right? This really gets at the heart of equity and how the NICU is difficult for everyone. It absolutely is. It doesn't matter if your baby is there for 1 day or 100 days, right? It's a super hard journey, but it is sometimes made that much more difficult based on how you present, based on your race or ethnic background, based on your native language, based on your gender identity or sexual orientation or religious orientation. And so, one of the things that Saul's Light does is seeks to create an equitable experience, meaning that when it comes to accessing information and resources, that all families have the same access. And so this was a really nice feature to have for our organization, but it was a great opportunity to focus not just on my story, but the larger NICU experience and to talk about how the NICU impacts people, just so that our whole country, because this is a national magazine, how our whole country must be aware that families are walking around with mental health issues, physical issues, or they're walking around with a story or experience that might burden them, right? If for nothing else, just for us to be kinder to each other and just for us to really take a look at what's happening in our community and decide how we want to invest our time, our resources, and most importantly, our advocacy. Now, we've talked about identifying and developing a story and then sharing that story. The next thing I want to talk about is, what do you do now? What are the next steps? How do you turn all of this advocacy into action, right? So you've gone through the NICU and you've advocated for yourself, you've taken care of yourself, you've advocated for your baby, and you've recognized that you now live in the new normal, right? And you have a fire burning into you. And that fire is saying, you got to get out there and make some changes, right? And change some things. This part of the presentation is going to be about how do we turn that advocacy into action? And these are the steps to do that, right? These are the ways that I've done it in my community. I've seen Jessica do with Mighty Little Giants and a bunch of other organizations across the nation that are doing similar work. It's important to know that the people with lived experience oftentimes are going to be the leaders of any sort of advocacy campaign. They're the people that can really speak truth to power about what an experience is like. So once you've identified and developed your plan or the change that you want to see in the community, it's important for you to identify who are going to be the champions of your campaign, of your advocacy campaign. First thing you want to do is identify and research the purpose, right? What are the issues that are going on in your community, and what are people doing about it? You may find that there isn't any sort of organization in your community that is thinking about the mental health of NICU parents or the financial burden of NICU parents, right? This is how you figure out what your issue is going to be. What is that pressing topic in the community? And what is the thing that you're passionate about? What is the thing that when it calls to you, the answer is yes, I'm going to do something about that, right? That is what your advocacy campaign or your action is going to be all about. It's important to then find out who are the people in your community that are dedicated to these issues. Are there community leaders and organizations? Are there politicians? Are there healthcare organizations that are already doing the work or interested in it? Maybe they need a champion. Maybe they need someone to be a part of the Patient Family Advisory Council, right? And is that you? So the next plan is to reach out to them. Then you want to build an effective campaign, and you want to understand the layout of your community to create information, so like toolkits, one-pagers, or graphics, and to be able to disseminate that information easily. Communication is the number one important thing to really invest your time and energy in when you're advocating for change in the community. It's important to share the messaging widely with everyone. Introduce people to your cause. Introduce people to the idea or the thing that you're going to change, and ask for help. You will need a dedicated team of people or volunteer to make it work, right? So thinking again about another quote, teamwork makes the dream work. That's what building your coalition network is all about. Many of the problems that we face are too big for one person, one organization, or one entity to handle. And so it's super important that when it comes to advocacy, you have all hands on deck so that you can lean on the skills, the expertise, and the networks of the people that are a part of it. Now, the final two steps are the most important. Your coalition should be diverse. It should be made up of stakeholders and organizations with similar missions and interests. And then these people are going to be people who really understand and also want to do the same thing that you want to do, right? They agree with the goals that you have, and they can dedicate the time and attention to it. And so they are going to help promote your campaign within their networks or within the community, or if you are going to be bringing something up to your state capital or the nation's capital, right? These are the people that are going to help that. Mobilizing the community is so important. These are going to be your support people. They're going to be your mouthpieces in the community. And these are going to be the people that are willing to share their stories. Because when it comes to decision making within the political arena, people are more likely to listen to the constituents. They are the people that have the true power of persuasion when it comes to advocacy. So again, just to reiterate that mobilizing your community is about issuing a call to action, leveraging the reach of social media, making sure that you get organized, that that all the people that are a part of your advocacy campaign know what their job is, right? And so once people are ready to mobilize, they need to share their stories, they need to write letters, they need to make calls. And it's important to think about, how are you going to get your story out there, right? The power of social media, of course, I mentioned, but maybe it's news articles, maybe it's your testimony at the Capitol, maybe it's participating in podcasts, maybe it's participating in webinars like this, right? When we show up and raise our voices, the opportunity for change cannot be denied. It is something that is within us, just like that light, right? That resiliency that we develop having gone through the NICU with with our babies, having seen their life hang into the balance, having seen them overcome their birth, having seen us become the people that we never thought we could, right? Some of the darkest days are spent in the NICU. But when you find that light again, it becomes a part of you, and it is a part of you forever. And so, what you decide to do with it is the thing that is going to create change in your life and perhaps in your community.